I think we should change to 3 on the hands.
3 on the hands, because yeah, five you're incapable of counting down because you're a schmuck.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome to MLB Live Before Lock-In. The impossible has happened. There are many people across, I was going to say across the globe, but really across the universe, that doubted that Eric would ever be able to make it to MLB Live Before Lock on time, that he'd be able to avoid any kind of technical hurdles. Well, guess what, haters? Go fuck yourselves, because Eric Lindquist is here in the flesh. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel at the start of the show. Eric, how does it feel to defy the odds?
I don't know. Just FaceTiming with Jordan Klein yesterday was the most tilting thing ever. Not because my internet wasn't working, but because I had to FaceTime Jordan Klein in order to do it. Face climbing is what you and I do and what we're going to do next week. So that'll be fine.
Explain what you and Jordan were doing. What is this face climbing that you're into?
Yeah, so face climbing. It's when, well, no, I'll show you next week. It'll be fine. But anyway, we are very much...
Sit on the edge of the bed and open wide. Jordan Klein, it's time to face climb. All right, guys, we are sponsored. Oh, by the way, shout out to Chris Williams. Chris Williams has already gifted out 5 YouTube memberships, and then again, another 5 YouTube memberships. So Chris, thank you very much for supporting the channel. We do appreciate it a whole bunch. Helps us support the channel around here. We are sponsored today by DraftKings Pick 6. So that's something that we'll be asking Eric a little bit about what he's liking in the Pick 6 streets. We've also got a final call for our grandfather sale over at OddsShopper. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then, of course, we got a baseball slate to be breaking down here as well. Now, Eric, I don't live all that far away from New York City. It is pouring outside right now. We got thunderstorms going on. So first thing I want to ask you before we start diving into some of these games, are there any particular weather situations that you are keeping your eye on for today?
Yeah, Toronto, New York, the storms. I mean, you just brought it up. It's not looking pretty. We don't have to think about Baltimore, Cleveland, because that, well, I mean, I don't know what's going to end up happening with this game, but it is going to be something that we'll analyze that, I guess, a little bit later in the program here as well. But New York is the one I'm on higher risk alert for. It doesn't look good. I guarantee you they late start, like they have to. I don't know what that does here. It's going to probably make the Yankees look pretty darn good. It's probably going to really make pretty much everything in the Sims tool. I just know how this works in the post-contest sim because we've seen it so many times this year where it's going to be like Toronto, the highest expected ROI 5-man stack, and then the Yankees number 2, and it's going to just look ridiculous. But like, I can't really make any argument for playing it if they don't late start this. Like, they have to late start it, right?
Yeah, by the way, another shout out. Jorge gifted out 50 YouTube memberships in the YouTube chat. So big guy, Jorge Giacomi, thank you very much. And also, Jorge, shoot me a message on Twitter. I want to know what ended up happening with the job offer you had that we were discussing the other day. But yeah, Jorge coming in here, 50 YouTube memberships. So thanks, man. We do appreciate that a whole bunch from you as well. Here's what I'm thinking ends up happening with the Yankee game is, like I said, people know, I don't live all that far away from New York City, and Yankee Stadium close enough nearby. weather's really shitty right now. It's supposed to be okay later. So here's the risk we run into is, do they just call the game early where they don't want to wait out the weather? If they are willing to wait, it seems like it should be totally fine in an hour and a half or so after the game's scheduled to start. So I'm going to leave the game in, with the caveat being is I have some exposure to the Yankees and Blue Jays, but it's not like these are like teams that are showing up in like 20% of lineups or anything. I have some exposure to them, but it's nothing crazy. I haven't made any kind of alterations for any weather scenarios. Baltimore, Cleveland's another one with some weather risk as well. But ultimately, I think the games are more likely to play than not.
I think so too. It's just, it's so frustrating. We'll see how it gets closer to the end of the show. We'll see what the weather looks like. I mean, we've got rain broken up all over the place. There could be delays. There could be stuff that pops up everywhere else, but I'm not going to make any kind of sacrifices in my lineups for it.
All right, let's start talking about these pitchers then, Eric, because we've got a bunch of games on the slate to talk about, which I know you are acutely aware of because you probably do a really long breakdown over on the OddsShopper YouTube channel, going through all of the games. Here's what we have on the high end. And once again, even though there's a billion games on the slate, lots of pitchers, lots of stacks, we don't have a single pitcher priced above 10K. We actually kind of have not the best high-end pitcher in terms of like ace quality type of guys. Here are the pitchers that are 9K or above. Joe Ryan, who's pitching against the Chicago White Sox. I mean, that's just a dream matchup the rest of the season. So Joe Ryan in Minnesota against the White Sox, he's the chalk. He is 39% owned. Even though we've got all these games on the slate, he's that chalky. Cutter Crawford, unowned, 3% owned. Kevin Gausman, relatively unowned, 5% owned. They got Blake Snell at 9K. He is 12% owned. Let's start with Joe Ryan. Super popular chalk option at 38.8% projected ownership, because you can't talk people off. Play him in cash games. For GPPs, if you're playing a bunch of lineups, you're going to want to have some amount of exposure to them. But do you want more than the field, less than the field, or right around the field?
More than the field. And I'm not a Joe Ryan guy. I mean, this isn't somebody that I've been playing a ton in some of these spots. He's had a great year. 3.1 WAR, 3.39 xFIP, third best amongst everybody on the slate behind Skubal and Reagans. That shouldn't surprise anybody. But you brought it up. It's an absolute dream matchup. I mean, these White Sox are so egregious. It is really good hitting weather, and we'll discuss that when we get over to the Minnesota Twins side of things. They're a popular stack, I believe, still the most popular stack that exists here on today's slate for good reason. Kind of wild to see some of the betting odds as I was transferring that over to my sheet. I legitimately bet every single left-handed or switch hitting bat on the Minnesota Twins to hit a home run today. So that's going to be an enjoyable experience, but it's going to be really enjoyable for pitchers to be facing this White Sox team. They traded away Paul DeJong, they traded away Eloy Jimenez, and they had a 62 WRC plus against righties, which is just like so egregiously bad that there aren't even really words for it. If the White Sox, I mean, that's over the last 30 days, by the way, sorry. But over the last 30 days, they are like significantly the worst offense in all of baseball. And that's going to continue. Joe Ryan has strikeout stuff. He has fly ball stuff. And there are going to be times we try to stack against Joe Ryan when he's chalky, but this is not one of those times. I've got him in 60% of my lineups.
Yeah, I have close to what you have. I have 55% of Joe Ryan in my top 150 lineups. He's so difficult to get away from. If he was, 60, 70% on it, becomes a different conversation. But, the ownership at 38%, I think that's pretty modest. I did the first bet I placed today, which was showing up as a top bet on OddsShopper. I don't know if you saw the opening line on Joe Ryan's strikeouts, but I bet Joe Ryan under 7.5 strikeouts, and it was like plus 115 this morning or something like that. Like that's how high the strikeout props are when pitchers are facing the Chicago White Sox. Get a guy like Joe Ryan, who's a very good starting pitcher, but he's not like a 30% K rate guy or anything like that. Over under was 7.5 strikeouts and heavily juiced towards the over this morning. I didn't see where it ended up or anything like that. But yeah, Joe Ryan's pretty clearly the top pitching option on the slate. I don't think anybody's going to quibble with that in any sort of way. The other question I have here is, if you're looking to pivot off of him, Eric, do you like any of these other pitchers that are 9K or higher? Blake Snell, Kevin Gausman, Cutter Crawford. If not, there's a lot of options. It's perfectly reasonable like other pitchers.
Yeah, I do like some other pitchers. I mean, I'm going to have scattered trace amounts of these guys. They all have immense upside. There's a reason that they're priced up here, but Blake Snell's in a small ballpark today, and it's just going to be, he's coming off of infinity strikeouts against the Colorado Rockies last time out. So I get it if you want to try to get a little bit different, getting to some Blake Snell in your life. Kevin Gausman has the weather concerns, and Cutter Crawford, he's good taking on Texas, but he's coming off a couple of abysmal outings himself. Given it was against the Yankees and the Dodgers, a lot of people are going to look like crap against them, but I am very much behind the chalk here in Joe Ryan. Not going to be getting to like any noticeable amounts of anybody else there.
Yeah, I mean, if you had to roster somebody else, I think it's pretty sensical that Blake Snell is the guy to go to. I'm overweight to Snell. I have north of 20% of him, so I do think that he's a pretty reasonable other option to be getting to here. I thought he was going to get traded at the trade deadline. I thought that the Giants had really well positioned themselves to move off of him. He's on a pretty team-friendly deal considering what happened with him in the offseason. And even though he was off to a slow start to the year, he's pitched so well lately that I figured his value is really high. The Giants were going to be able to get a good return from him. The Giants were selling off other pieces, but holding on to Blake Snell, not moving him. He may have a 5.1 ERA for the year. Underlying numbers, really solid for him. In fact, this is actually kind of crazy. I don't know how much you've paid attention to this, Eric. Underlying numbers, way better for Snell this year than they were last year. And he was the Cy Young winner last year. So, I mean, you got Blake Snell, 3.23 expected ERA, 3.35 FIP. His strikeout rate, once again, 30+%. So, Blake Snell, I think that he's getting slept on a little bit. Also, the Reds, it's a good strikeout matchup. So, Blake Snell, I'm about double the field with having him in over 20% of my lineup. So, nothing else that I'm really getting to in this price range. So, let's go and talk about the next range of pitchers, which is the 8K guys. And this includes the one other chalk pitching option on the slate. At $8,600, Yusei Kikuchi is 37% owned. We only have two pitchers on the entire slate that are over 20% owned. It's Kikuchi, 37%, Joe Ryan just under 40%. So we'll talk about the other 8K range pitchers in a second. But first, I'm going to ask you the same question about Kikuchi that I asked you about Joe Ryan, that I also ask you like every single time we do the show every day, which is Yusei Kikuchi being a chalk option here. In large field tournaments, do you want to be over, underweight, or at the field on Kikuchi?
I'm going to be underweight to Kikuchi. I already bet his under 6.5 strikeouts. It's plus money. That is a wild type number. I think Tampa Bay, this is going to be a team that, again, they've done some maneuvering themselves. They end up trading off Paredes. They end up acquiring Christopher Morel, who's got around a 24-25% strikeout rate on the season. Jose Siri, 35% strikeout rate. I mean, there's some high strikeout rates throughout this one, but at the same time, you said Kikuchi. I mean, 10% barrel percentage, 45% hard hit, fly ball contact, and Minute Maid's played pretty small this season. I think one of my favorite contrarian teams to be getting to, I don't have a ton of 5-mans of them, but I have a lot of 2- and 3-mans of specific Tampa Bay hitters, and they didn't part with Yandy Diaz, which is kind of a big part of this too, where Yandy Diaz is really good at avoiding strikeouts, right around 15% on the season. I'm just not quite sold that we're going to see Yusei Kikuchi switch teams and immediately become like this strikeout artist. Houston once upon a time could do it with Garrett Cole and Lance McCullers. You know what else they could do once upon a time? Use sticky stuff. You can't do that anymore. So Yusei Kikuchi, I know that he's striking out right around 25% of right-handed bats. I understand that this is going to be an easier time than most here, but God, it's really hard to get to this kind of ownership on Kikuchi.
Yeah, Sean did drop an interesting tidbit into chat. This is kind of like interesting piece of history. I had no clue. I really, Sean, you got to hit me up on Twitter one time. Just let me know where you get your information from. I don't find most of it to be relevant, but it's just a lot of information. I don't know where you get it from. So I'm kind of interested by that. But Yusei Kikuchi will be making the first ever start by a Japanese pitcher for the Houston Astros tonight.
Oh, so Houston Astros are bad people? Is that where we're getting at?
No, it's just interesting information. It's just interesting information.
Just interesting information.
Like it's not anything that's going to help you with your DFS lineups, but it's just interesting. I don't know where he finds this stuff from.
Well, I must say, as much as everybody cheers for the Houston Astros because they've always been very trustworthy and upstanding, good for them for finally becoming a little bit more woke. Way to go, Houston.
I think they're great people there in Houston.
Yeah, great. Just fantastic. Their internet works.
Chris Williams. He asked me to. Here, I could just answer this really quick. Chris Williams says, great show as always, guys. Question. You can answer this at the end of the show so nobody's upset on NFL talk. Or will you guys do a show on best ball for NFL? Never done it, but want to try it this year. We have best ball strategy videos up on the YouTube channel right now that Matt Kajeski did. If you search on the videos tab, there's some videos that mapped it on like best players to target at different positions. So it's up there. But if that is not exactly what it is that you are looking for, then let me know. But that is something that we have up on the site already. So we've got that. We've got that stock and barrel. I don't think that's a phrase that people use, but it's there. It's stock and barrel. It's all good to go. It's loaded. It says there's another super chat here, but it's not showing up. So I don't know what the deal with that is. Maybe just a weird glitch there on YouTube. Let's go back to talking about pitchers. By the way, I'm right around even with the field on Kikuchi. I do think that because of the strikeout upside that he has in this matchup against the Tampa Bay Rays, that it's certainly something that gives him a good amount of upside. He's also been generating a lot of strikeouts this year, 26.2% strikeout rate for Yusei Kikuchi. Yeah, the results have been inconsistent and all over the place, but the strikeout upside is there in this matchup. The Rays, a weird team that decided to sell at the trade deadline. Like they traded Randy Arozarena to the Mariners at the time they made that trade. If I remember correctly, they were half a game behind the Mariners in the standings, and they decided that they're going to be sellers, Mariners going to be buyers. So it's definitely a weakened version of their lineup versus what it otherwise would have been.
If there's one team that I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt to, as far as like how to maximize their long-term profitability or just like their win expectation, it's the Tampa Bay Rays. Like I trust them that they know what they're doing because they've just proven time and time again to be competitive and revamp their roster in inexplicable ways.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't think they would have made the playoffs, but I certainly think they would contend. I mean, I still think they could contend for a playoff spot, but they were definitely going to be contending for a playoff spot if they didn't move off of Arozarena, some of the relief pitchers. But either way, I mean, you got a guy in Kikuchi, high strikeout rate this year against a team that's going to strike out a good amount against lefties. Got a 4 expected ERA, 3.65 FIP. Also super simple for cash games. Tell me if you disagree. Joe Ryan is your cash game pitcher on FanDuel. On DraftKings, it's Joe Ryan and Yusei Kikuchi.
Easiest cash game day of all time.
All right. Now let's talk about pivots in this 8K range because we've got two other pitchers that are pulling ownership. Tyler Phillips is 18% owned, pitching against the Seattle Mariners. And then you've also got Spencer Schwellenbach at $8,800. He's 18% owned because he's drawing a great matchup against the Miami Marlins. I've watched some of Schwellenbach pitch this year. I've probably seen most of his starts, I think. He's got really good stuff. He's been much more impressive to me than I expected him to be earlier in the year when he first got called up. I love that matchup for him against the Miami Marlins. So I think he is certainly somebody we could consider as a good pivot. Is he your preferred pivot off of Yusei Kikuchi, or is it somebody else?
Yeah, I think Schwellenbach, he's impressed me too. I mean, it was so hard to know what to make of him because when he got called up, he went from AA ball directly to the big leagues. And that is a marked difference. So shout out to him for finding ways to be successful right from the early going, not having pitched in AAA ball, but 3.47 xFIP for him, 3.28 expected ERA. So he's gotten a little bit unlucky. He's always been good at every single level of baseball at avoiding home runs. Had a 54% ground ball rate at AA. So it's weird to see a little bit of regression there at 37, 38% at the big leagues. But strikeout stuff, man, it's carried over. And that's an exciting prospect for these Atlanta Braves. And it's especially exciting for DFS purposes today when he's sub 20% owned against the Miami Marlins, who also sold off their entire stock. They've got Berger, Sanchez, Bride, Stowers, all of these guys 25% and higher against righties striking out. It is a great opportunity for him to go ape shit in this one.
Yeah, I'm surprised he isn't. And maybe he will end up coming in more popular just because I think people, just like the White Sox, are going to want to be picking on the Marlins for the rest of the season. This is like the Los Angeles Angels of last year, where just every pitcher was uber popular against them. So for me, when I'm looking at these pitchers, it is the best pivot. It is going to be for me getting to Spencer Schwellenbach. I don't really understand the ownership on Tyler Phillips, though. Is he somebody you're getting to? Because I don't really, and I know it's the Mariners. They strike out a lot, so people are targeting against them all year. It is an upgraded offense now that they have a Arozarena. I don't think that Tyler Phillips at nearly 20% ownership warrants the same kind of attention that Schwellenbach is getting against the Marlins.
Yeah, he's been good so far. I mean, you see the 1.80 ERA, that sticks out, 3.11 expected ERA, 3.44 xFIP, half a win above replacement in just all of 4 appearances, 3 starts at the bigs this season. The guy's pretty good, but I'm with you. I think we have more of a sample size for Schwellenbach. This is a guy that's been in, double A ball, triple A ball for absolutely ever. And this is the first time that somebody's really given him a crack at it. 4.36 xFIP this season at triple A ball. He's just a markedly worse pitcher, I think, than Schwellenbach. And it's not that we have the sample size for either one of them to really make that affirmative, but in terms of stuff plus, in terms of like breaking down their pitch mixes, I don't see how you don't like Schwellenbach. And then let's add in this factor too. So while Seattle is a great pitcher's ballpark, the best in baseball over a 3-year rolling average, we do get different bats. You add Justin Turner to a lineup, to a top of a lineup, that's a 17% strikeout bat that automatically gets inserted into the top of it. He has very hard decay, and that's a professional hitter. I know it wasn't the best of years for him right from the get-go. Had a better July coming into the trade deadline, got himself out of Toronto and onto a contender. But Seattle, having him in that lineup, having Randy Arozarena at 24.5% as opposed to, a 30% strikeout bat up there. Jorge Polanco's been hitting better. It's not the same matchup against the Seattle Mariners as what we had before the deadline.
And it wasn't a great offense before. Going to be even. The only question I think we have going forward is who's going to be the worst offense, the Marlins or the White Sox. And
White Sox.
It's going to be a dead heat. They're both going to be dog shit. It's going to be tough.
Sometimes maybe shit. Sometimes maybe shit.
Yeah, it's going to be bad. By the way, somebody in chat, if you want us to build a lineup for you in the single lineup sim, when we get to that in a little bit, throw it into the chat and I'll pick one of them out and throw it in. Not going to do the same thing I did yesterday where I asked for the lineups early on Twitter and then I got one and then we realized that players were missing and caused a little bit of a hold up there. So somebody in chat, throw your lineup in, all of the players in order. And then when we get to building a lineup, I'll pick one randomly and we will throw it in there and we'll critique it and we'll see if we can improve it. Like yesterday, with the lineup we put in, first run at a negative 3% ROI expected. Then Eric and I rebuilt it, made a couple of changes, nothing like crazy significant. And then ended up coming away with like a 32% expected ROI. So if you're playing a lineup today and you want us to grade it, throw it into chat and we'll look at it in a sec here. But other starting pitchers in this price range, anything else that stands out to you as being important, Eric?
So yeah, Schwellenbach was kind of the main guy that, we're both on him. So that makes me happy to know. Tyler Phillips, we have a really high top 2 percentage on him. I think it's a little bit off for me, but I'm still happy to get to a little bit of Tyler Phillips, nothing crazy. Yeah, nothing else really to talk about in the 8K. It's weird to have Brian Wu at 8,500 and have no interest in him against Philly, but the strikeout stuff hasn't been there. He's not going as deep into games here. It's really hard to get there today, although it's just wild to see him at 8,500, 2% owned, and I have 0.
And just to circle back on the Tyler Phillips thing really quick, the biggest issue I have with him, it's just a lack of strikeout upside. He was not getting any strikeouts in the minor leagues. He was actually actively bad in the minor leagues. AAA this year, Tyler Phillips, 4.89 ERA, 4.33 FIP. In AAA last year, 4.69 ERA, 4.27 FIP. And in AA last year, 5.03 ERA, 4.39 FIP. Then you don't have any 2022 numbers from him. In 2021, he had a 9.9 ERA and a 7.93 FIP in AAA. And then also the strikeout stuff that I was just referencing. Last year was 15.6% in AAA. This year it was 19.8%. So got a guy that was hit really hard in the minor leagues and then also didn't generate strikeouts. To me, this is a guy who things are going to come apart for him sooner rather than later. So not somebody I'm really interested in. Nothing else that I'm really getting exposure to in this 8K range. Kikuchi, Schwellenbach, those are the two preferred options for myself. Let's talk about the 7K pitchers, Eric. And this is a really big group of pitchers. Only one of them pulling any kind of ownership, though. Gavin Stone, 13% owned against the Oakland A's. Do you like him in the 7K range or anybody else standing out to you?
I'm a little surprised to see him like double-digit owned here. Gavin Stone's been good over the entire sample size of his season. He hasn't been very good lately here. I would say the Dodgers in general with starting pitching has not been very enjoyable for them lately. 4.19 xFIP for him on the season, 3.84 expected ERA. Everything across the board looks all right here, but he doesn't get strikeouts. And Oakland is number 1 in WRC plus over the last 30 days. They are 5th in WRC plus over the last 30 days against right-handed pitching. I mean, I like the over of that game. I like getting to Oakland bats. I feel like I've played Oakland bats nonstop for the last couple of weeks because they get no respect, Rodney Dangerfield style. But Gavin Stone, I have a couple of trace amounts of him, 6%, but like I might reduce that down a little bit because if he becomes like the punt du jour, I feel like I'd rather just play the entire range and just kind of scattershot a number of different spots. I'll go to some Shane Baz. I'll get to some, oh, God forbid, Jose Urania, but here we are. I mean, there's just like a number of different dudes that I could allocate to 3-4% to rather than play like a 10-15% Gavin Stone. We'll see where he lands, but I mean, that's the highest ownership number that I mean, 11.2% ownership for him up against Oakland. This is just kind of a freaky spot for sure.
I don't have a single pitcher in this price range that's in more than 10% of my lineups.
Good.
The one I have the most of is Gavin Stone, but I'm underweight to the field to him. I only have 5%. So I don't like this price range. Nothing really stands out to me. Really, where I'm building my lineups the most, I've got north of 20% of Blake Snell and Spencer Schwellenbach. Then I've got Joe Ryan making up about half of my exposure at pitcher. I'm even with the field on Kikuchi. You know, that right there, that's almost all my pitching exposure. I've got other guys that I'm mixing in here, and I've got one pitcher who's really cheap that we're going to talk about in a second here. But outside of that, I'm mainly building around these spend up options. And because the spend up options, they're not really that expensive. You know, I mean, Joe Ryan, 9,700, Kikuchi, 8,600, Snell, 9,000, Schwellenbach, 8,800. It's not like these are pitchers that are so expensive that I can't stack the offense I want with these guys. You can pretty easily. So I don't see all that much need to go super cheap. The only one punt option I'm getting to, Eric, at any kind of meaningful rate, it's Randy Vasquez, and it's not nothing to do with him, just because he's pitching against the Colorado Rockies. That's it.
Totally get it. And I like the Rockies. I like Ryan McMahon. I bet his homer plus 550 to homer. Ryan McMahon. He will not be my home run play for the day because, again, I like one team just like everybody else likes one team today. Hi, Minnesota Twins. I don't know how you see Matt Wallner plus 420 and not fire that up immediately. Wind blowing out there to right field, so fire that one up. But in terms of cheap pitching, the one guy that I think I'm going to end up close to 10% of is Shane Baz. He got up to 86 pitches there on the 26th. He got up to 92 pitches before. He just simply had some tough sledding outings. He had been one of the better young pitchers in baseball, and I think we'll see some decent stuff from him going forward. The strikeouts have been hit and miss. Against the Yankees, he had all of one. We're going for one. Against Cincinnati, he found himself 7 strikeouts there. I think I'll play a little bit on talent and talent alone, but it's obviously a freaky spot against Houston. They don't strike out a ton. Yeah, it's just simply a play on talent.
And by the way, Randy Vasquez in 12% of my lineups, being the punt play that I then kind of exposed.
Oh, so you did get to double digits on one guy.
Yeah, well, but he's 6,100. Nobody in the 7.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair.
It's really cheap price point, decent matchup against the Colorado Rockies. And if you look at the other cheap pitchers, you know, Vasquez is 10.5% projected owned. You got Shane Baz 6%, Austin Gomber 3%, Carlos Carrasco. Kind of surprised Carlos Carrasco is 4% owned. This is how bad Carlos Carrasco is that I look and be like, boy, I can't believe he's 4% owned at $6,300. But yeah, I can't believe people are playing Carlos Carrasco in this spot. And then you got Davis Martin 2% owned. So nobody in this low range that's coming in with like 0.5% ownership or anything like that. The field is playing some amount of these cheap guys, and I don't really have that much interest. And even if you guys are playing 1, 2, 3 lineups, wouldn't even consider Randy Vasquez. It's more so if you have a lineup that's otherwise really expensive and you just need a cheap pitcher, to me, Vasquez is the best of these other options. But that's not really saying all that much. Anything else you want to add about cheap pitchers, Eric?
Not really. Again, Shane Baz, somebody that, again, talent alone. Jose Urania, I don't know how he's surviving here, but it's more of like a pitch count thing, and he's actually been good at avoiding runs. Strikeout stuff is just not there, and it won't be there. He doesn't have any breaking stuff to really get swing and miss, but I'm probably I'll get to a little Randy Vasquez. I have 1% Randy Vasquez as it stands right now, so maybe I'll have to revamp that a little bit. Yeah, I don't. And Paul Blackburn, he's had to face the Angels a ton in his career being an Oakland guy, and now, of course, his first start as a Met is going to be against the Angels, which I find to be pretty funny and comical. But yeah, nothing really to add in pitching. Let's move on.
We did get a super chat from Caleb Wiggins, and I'm going to spoil something a little bit here because he said, what about the Mets? They've been hitting good. What about the Mets? They've been hitting good pitcher. Okay, so I see what you're saying. They've been in some tough matchups and they've hit those pitchers really well. They don't have a tough matchup today. They're going up against Tyler Anderson. The Mets are the team I have the most exposure to as a stack, and that's who I'm playing in single entry. So do I like the Mets? No, I love them. I'm getting a lot of exposure to the Mets today.
Oh, I mean, they are number one in our top stack percentage. That jumped out to me immediately when, I was doing my normal prep, but that's a pretty hefty stand. The Twins are the team I have the most of, which now they're even more popular. We just got an update 5 minutes ago. That's getting me a little bit worried because they're at 12.8%, but I just bet every single lefty across the board. This should be the sacrificial Davis Martin game, so that'll be enjoyable.
Let's talk about FanDuel pitchers here and see if there's anything that's really all that different across the two sites. But looking at FanDuel, the one thing that does kind of stand out to me is I get it because Joe Ryan's so much more expensive than the other pitchers. But Joe Ryan at 10,600, he's only pulling 10% ownership because these other guys are so much cheaper. Kikuchi's 8,900 on FanDuel, so he's 24% owned. Blake Snell is 8,100, so he's 12% owned. With Joe Ryan being, I'm not going to say contrarian because he's the fourth most popular pitcher on the slate. Pretty easy to make him my favorite GPP target for FanDuel pitching.
I would agree with that. There's no doubt. Again, I'm not a stan for Joe Ryan in any way, shape, or form, but 10% to Kikuchi's 27.8%. Give me the Joe Ryan side for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're looking to save salary, Kikuchi at 8,900 certainly looks good, but relative to salaries and ownership, I prefer Joe Ryan against the White Sox. You're getting less than half the ownership of what Kikuchi has. And they're the one too. Blake Snell is half the ownership of Yusei Kikuchi, and he's $800 cheaper. Blake Snell is $8,100 on FanDuel. Considering how FanDuel's been pitching prices been this, it's an egregious salary. All the best pitchers this year have regularly been $8,900, $9,900, $10,000 on FanDuel. 8,100 for Blake Snell, considering the strikeout upside and how well he's pitched lately. That seems like a steal to me.
I would agree. Not a whole lot to add.
Blake Snell, if you want to also pivot off of Yusei Kikuchi and save some salary, $8,100. Anything else that's different for you on FanDuel relative to DK?
Looking through the board, it's kind of, Tyler Phillips is 10% owned there. I'd have like 0. Schwellenbach, obviously still playable there, 9,300, would still be firing him up. Blake Snell, 6.2%. You just brought him up. Yeah, it's probably going to be it. I mean, there would be trace amounts of a guy here, a guy there. Don't think I would be getting Denny Shane Baz there. Brian Wu, definitely not going to get there either. But Snell, Schwellenbach, Ryan, those three alone, getting away from some of the Kikuchi Phillips ownership would look nice.
All right. A couple questions that came into Discord. One of them is from Hey, I'm Drew 95. He wants us to plug his lineup into the single lineup sim and look at it for him and do some analysis. So we will certainly do that for him. And then we've got another question here. This one is coming to us from Clintwood83. He says, I'm sorry for being 15 minutes late. You don't have to apologize because you don't watch every second of the show. It's totally cool. I don't assume that we are like the end-all be-all of information where you have missed out on life if you miss a second of our show or anything. But I appreciate the sentiments there, Clintwood. He wants to know, who are we liking for pitchers for single entry and cash? Cash, pretty easy. You want to be going to, and like, there's nothing to even think about here. You're going Joe Ryan and Yusei Kikuchi in cash. That's also who I'm playing in single entry, by the way. My pitching combo is Kikuchi and Joe Ryan.
Correct.
Anybody else that you would consider for single entry? Like if you had to pivot off of Joe Ryan or Kikuchi for a single entry lineup, which one would it be?
So I'm playing Schwellenbach and Joe Ryan that's my combination. I'm not going to be getting away from the Twins. I am a chalk donkey, the likes of which this world is ashamed of, and I will continue to be so. There you go.
All right, let's pull up the single lineup sim, Jordan. We're going to put in Hey, I'm Drew's lineup. I just want to make sure, though, that he is playing this in a GPP. Because if this is his cash game lineup, it's not going to... All right, it's his cash lineup. So we'll throw it in there. By the way, officially, Yankees, Blue Jays started the game delayed. We were kind of anticipating.
Same thing with Cincinnati. So Cincinnati and the Giants, they ended up getting that game delayed too, which is good.
Yeah, which expected. Nothing that should really be changing stuff for us. So, hey, I'm Drew. Just for reference, we'll plug it in here anyway. But the way that you're going to be analyzing cash game lineups versus tournament lineups is very different. And this tool is built for GPPs. We'll plug it in anyway. We'll plug it in and just to kind of show what the sim ROI is for this lineup. But here we go. At pitcher, Jordan, it is Yusei Kikuchi and Joe Ryan. Jordan's going to want to pick Kikuchi for his home run pick later now.
Sure is.
At catcher, Sean Murphy. First base, Shohei Ohtani, another popular home run pick of Jordan Klein. Second base, he is Xander Bogaerts. Jordan's never heard of him. Third base, that is Manny Machado. Shortstop, Orlando Arcia. A-R-C-I-A. Yep. Outfield. Let him catch up first. All right, so outfield, that is going to be Larnach, L-A-R-N. Robles, R-O-B-L-E-S. And then Wallner, W-A-L-L-N-E-R.
Wow.
And then we will run this through. So the reason this is probably not going to project out all that well is going to be because it doesn't stack a lot. But you're playing this lineup in cash games. Hey, I'm Drew. So totally different than if you were playing it in a GPP. But still valuable to show people this. I'll do for large field. Yeah, big GPP today is 20% to first, so leave that there. And then we'll see what ends up coming up there. And then Mr. Coolcam asked for our favorite FanDuel stacks. So yeah, we'll talk about our favorite stacks here in a second as well. And then we'll also do, I think Malucard giving us a FanDuel lineup. So we'll go ahead and we'll do that because we haven't really done too much FanDuel stuff in here. Right, look at that. Even though it is not a stacked lineup, it still actually ended up showing up okay.
Look at that.
Partly, let's see. He does have two hitters from the, no, not really stacked, just individually. I guess you have enough players that project well in our data that end up coming out okay. So, hey, I'm Drew. Anyway, I think that's a very good lineup to be playing in your cash games today. I know that's not what this is intended to be used for, but either way, cash games, I think you're looking pretty good for today. Let's do a FanDuel lineup now. We'll do Malucars. Yeah, so FanDuel lineup.
This is so cool to look at. I mean, this is just really, really fun. What a great addition.
And we are going to be having a sale on this starting Monday, guys. I kind of leaked it, Eric, because I felt bad that we're pushing this news. I didn't want people to go sign up right away at full price, and then we get the sale starting on Monday. So just letting you guys know, there's going to be a sale on Monday. We also have a sale right now for OddsShopper. One of the other reasons we didn't want to be running two sales at once, but over at OddsShopper, there's a link down below in the description box. And Jordan, please put the graphic on screen because I fucking love these graphics. If you sign up with the promo code Grandfather, you can get yourself 50% off over at OddsShopper. The reason Grandfather is because we're changing around some of the packages, but people who sign up right now, and the sale is going to be ending today with the promo code Grandfather, which you can see here, that is me photoshopped to be old, and then Emac, he was already old, so Brody didn't need to change him in the graphic at all. But yeah, sign up with the promo code Grandfather, and you get yourself 50% off. You also get grandfathered into the current, by the way, it's, go back to the other one with Eric.
Who's the marketing genius who came up with this? I mean, I am very impressed by it too.
Tom did.
It was me. I did it.
No. I was on the marketing call a couple weeks ago when we came up with the promo code and everything.
I'm the person. Okay.
We came up with it weeks ago. I don't know what to tell you.
I came up with, okay.
You came up with the EMAC idea, I thought.
I did. No, I came up with the aging people thing. That was me. Right. You hate me. It's all right. You never read my messages. It doesn't matter. I'm irrelevant.
I don't think you came up with the promo code.
I didn't come up with the promo code. I didn't say I came up with the promo code. I just said, we're going to use code Grandfather. We better age us up. Also, it's really creepy because I look like one of my dad's best friends and I don't look like my dad. And so I have questions and I'm going to do 23andMe.
If you saw the Kill Tony episode, if you go back to that really quick, you look like the face Kill Tony made when he was playing Biden in that image with just the wide eyes and the mouth open.
I do.
That's more what you look like. Yeah.
It's really good. Oh.
Anyway, we had the
I'll
lineup
beat you right
here
now
from Malukar. I have to find it again. I had it up in front of me, but then the chat scrolled and then I lost it.
Just use code grandfather and make me feel better about my life. And rather than Greg just ignoring me like he does on shows and now obviously does in text form too, just sign up so you guys can get all the goodies for the long term. Again, it's 50% off the first week month, but that's not the key part. The key part is that you will be grandfathered in for the rest of eternity at the given price that we have going right now. You will be grandfathered in at that rate from now until the end of time. It's like $50 a month. It's like, $14.99 for a week. You have an opportunity to save yourself a ton of money and have all of the tools by signing up now. That's why you want to do it.
All right, let's build this Malukar lineup. Plug it in here. He's got Yusei Kikuchi at pitcher, Jordan. At first base, Matt Olson. Second base is Xander Bogaerts. At third base, we have he deleted I'm in the middle of reading the lineup and he deleted it.
Good. Fuck you.
How did you, Malachi? I don't even understand how you went back, found a message from the beginning of the show and deleted it. All right, so we're not going to be able to do Malukar's lineup here. We've run into an issue. Throw Malukar on the grandfather image too, because the old man accident. He's deleted his message that contained the lineup, so we can't read it off anymore. So here we go. There are the first three players from Malukar's lineup. If you guys haven't done yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Let's look at some of the other questions that we have here in Discord, and then we'll talk about the rest of the stacks we're liking for the slate. First off, Mr. Coolcam says, what is our favorite FanDuel stack for GPPs? So let's start here by answering the question we got from Mr. Coolcam. If you're building one lineup in a FanDuel GPP, you could take this down now, Jordan, because I don't know if we'll ever finish Malukar's lineup. Unless you just want to play around and make a lineup for yourself in the background. That's totally fine as well. Oh, okay. All right. Well, that works. There. Mr. Coolcam wants to know what our favorite stack is for FanDuel GPPs. So just like for me on DraftKings, the same thing I like on FanDuel. I really like the Mets against Tyler Anderson. Mets offense has been very good. It's also a lineup where, particularly for FanDuel purposes, there are individual hitters like Pete Alonso, Francisco Lindor. You really like to have in stacks. You could ignore some of the riffraff at the bottom of the Mets lineup, and they get a matchup here against Tyler Anderson, who his numbers are good this year. Not going to deny. 2.96 ERA, 4.17 expected ERA. This is not a guy I think is good, though. Last year, he had a 5.43 ERA, 4.96 expected ERA, and every single projection model has him as being dog shit the rest of the year. Steamer, 4.72 ERA the rest of the season. Zips, 4.71 ERA. The Bat, 4.92 ERA. I think this is going to be a rough second half of the season for Tyler Anderson, as most of his recent seasons have not been great. I'm looking to stack against him with a really good Mets offense and at modest ownership. We got the Mets 5% owned on DraftKings, 6% owned on FanDuel. I like them against Tyler Anderson. For yourself, Eric, if you're building one GPP lineup over on FanDuel, which team would you be stacking?
The Tampa Bay Rays.
Okay. Looking for
There's no way that it's massive leverage. I mean, FanDuel, you have over a quarter of the lineups. A quarter of the lineups that are rostering Kikuchi. You eliminate a quarter of the lineups by having Kikuchi get blown up, and then you can kind of scattershot wherever you want on the board. You can take you could just take chalk across the board and be in a really good spot with Joe Ryan, who I prefer at 9% there, 10-6. It's pretty nominal when you think about some of the other stacks you could get to. And there's not a ton of them that are all that popular or expensive on FanDuel. I mean, I'm playing more than I expected to as I'm rerunning stuff over on DK for the final time. And on FanDuel, I really like the idea of it because, on DK, you're kind of like, all right, you get leverage against the one pitcher there. And, you're able to play up to 5, but like on FanDuel, to eliminate a quarter of the lineups if Kikuchi gets blown up and have the stack that did it, I think that is really, really valuable over there today.
And there we go. Malukar has a good looking lineup there. It has a 32.4% sim ROI. So, yeah, nothing that I think you need to change there. Malukar is looking good. I didn't see where he ended up submitting that lineup there, but good man, Malukar. You built yourself a good lineup there. So don't change anything. You're good to rock and roll. I dig it. Let's see if there's any other questions. J12 for Heisman asked thoughts on Blake Snell. Yeah, he's a contrarian pitcher. I like a good amount. I have him in over 20% of my lineups. And looks like we're caught up on other questions, unless anybody else has ones they want to throw into me. So let's go ahead now, Eric, and talk about the other stacks that we're liking. I've made it clear I like the Mets as a contrarian stack. Who is the team on DraftKings you have the most exposure to overall? Is it the Rays for leverage, or is there a different team you have showing up predominantly?
No, it's the Minnesota Twins. They are still just taking over everything that I'm doing there. It is 88 degrees and crazy humid, high dew point, high heat index, sitting, 8-mile-per-hour wind going out to right field to the Kirby Puckett gate number 34. I mean, I just don't see any way that Davis Martin and these White Sox don't get obliterated. Now, Davis Martin, we haven't had the longest sample size of here, but I want to also point out something else about the White Sox that we want to attack. This bullpen is so fucking bad. It is terrible. They ended up trading out Michael Kopech as well. There's not going to be any hope. They're not trying to win baseball games. They are going to just sit in their little pool of mediocrity and twiddle their thumbs until next year. They have nothing to play for. They have no one to play for. They're going to get completely shelled in some of these spots. And yeah, you have John Brabia, who's now going to be your closer. He's one of the worst pitchers in baseball over the last month or so. Justin Anderson is terrible. And then some of these lefties, Jared Schuster, I've got him 564th out of all relief pitchers in baseball this season. Zips has them at 524. I think that's the same number. Actually, no, that's Fangraphs that has them at 524. Touki Toussaint, if you remember the Atlanta days and the Angels days, and the guy can just give up home runs like nobody's business. Chad Kuhl, same thing with Colorado. It is maybe the worst bullpen I have ever seen. So enjoy that. Fire it up ad nauseum, because once it's done with Martin, it only gets better from there.
I mean, it's clearly a good spot for the Twins offense, right? There's a reason they're the chalkiest team on the slate. The one issue I have with them is they're also in our top stacks, so when I run everything through the Sims, that they're showing up as the most negatively leveraged team on the slate. So I do think they're a little bit too highly owned. So with that being the case, I get a little bit underweight to the field to them as a stack. I do a bunch of them as one-offs and as a secondary stack. I'm going to be underweight to them as a 5-man stack solely because of ownership reasons, though, not because of any issues I have with them or anything. Single entry, I really think the ownership could be problematic, though. Single entry, we could see all these guys 20 to 25% owned. And on a slate of this size, that's not something I'm really crazy interested in. But are there any other teams that are even close to the Minnesota Twins for you?
Tampa Bay Rays are in 17% of my lineups.
Okay. I mean, I have 6% of the Tampa Bay Rays, so I like them a little bit for leverage as well. We have them projected for, 3% ownership? So, yeah, I'm double the field on the Rays. I don't love the offense, particularly with some of the trades they've made, where now it's like Curtis Mead is in the middle of the lineup. Like, what is some of this?
What is a Curtis
Mead? I think that just because there is so much ownership going to Yusei Kikuchi, and he does have a wide range of outcomes, I think that it makes sense to get to some of the Rays as a leverage contrarian stack.
Yeah, I'm going to try to temper it down here, but as I keep running stuff through the Sims tool, again, I built out a couple of different sets of lineups, and I'm playing a little bit more than normal today. And I'm a big fan of just getting to some of these Tampa Bay Rays and really kind of forcing some of that leverage. You said it yourself. I mean, there's a wide range of outcomes that exists here, and I want to embrace that. I want to be on the right side of history and not have infinity Yusei Kikuchi with the entire field. So if I'm going to be lower on him, it just makes sense that, some of these batters that I'm getting to that are building their way up here. Jose Siri, one of my highest owned batters here at 16% of lineups. I'm not getting to any batter on this entire slate over 32%. That's Willie Castro, ironically enough. Hi, Sean V. But I'm very much on board with getting to some of these Tampa Bay guys well above average.
Aaron Friedman in chat bringing up that the new win total for the White Sox is 42.5.
Jesus.
Is that really what it is? Up at
Dude, they've lost like 17 games in a row.
Let's see, what is it? All right. Win total.
When's the
for
last
the White
time they won?
Sox? Yeah, 42.5. Oh my God. It's so bad.
I feel like I would want the under. Ooh, Arizona put up 3 in the first, all by solo home runs. Did they just start off with 3 solo home runs to start off the game? They did. Oh, Carroll had a triple and then scored on a bad throw. Marte homer, Peterson homer. Decent start there in the early slate if you fired up any Arizona Diamondbacks.
Did not play the early slate.
Gotcha.
Did not play that one.
Josh Bell home run. Holy shit. What is going on?
In 10 minutes. Yeah, what's up?
Josh Bell just homered. They just went triple, homer, homer, homer to start off the game against Luis Ortiz.
Well, there it is. If you guys played the early slate, hopefully you stack the Arizona Diamondbacks. It seems like they already broke the slate. Yeah. Are there any other teams that are important to your builds tonight, Eric?
Yeah, I've got some Mets in my lineups as well. I've got some Seattle Mariners. I think the Sims tool is really pushing some Seattle into our lives. I'm not playing a lot of Phillips either, so it makes complete sense that I'm getting to Seattle Mariners bats here as well. The Yankees, I want to play a little bit more coming off of I don't think there'll be any issue there with the weather. San Francisco, I think, might end up a little bit overowned relative to what we have projected there. We have them at 4.5%. They're one of the most positively leveraged stacks. I'm just worried that doesn't come to fruition, considering it's Great American Small Park. And we know Great American Small Park, pretty good for the old solo home run world. But yeah, I'm kind of flat amongst a lot of these teams. I mean, I'm pretty flat on Houston, pretty flat on Toronto, pretty flat on San Diego against Gomber. I do like Colorado too. Colorado, I had kind of alluded is terrible. You know, you were playing a little bit of him. He is pulling a tiny bit of ownership. It's not really even for leverage purposes. It's just that Petco plays small. Petco has played ridiculously small this season. Anybody who goes and uses the leaderboards there for StatCast Park Factors, it is absolutely incredible that Petco is #1 in home runs above expectation amongst every single ballpark in baseball if you take off the 3-year rolling average. If you just go to this year, Petco is 132, next up Dodger Stadium, then Yankee Stadium, Minute Maid Park up there. I mean, it's played really weird in a couple of different spots this season, so pay attention to some of those park factors. But Petco, hey, it keeps happening. I'm going to fire up some lefties. I'm going to play Michael Toglia a lot as a one-off here as well, so long as he ended up in that lineup. And sure enough, he's batting 6th today. So that's going to be somebody that shows up quite a bit for me. They buried Chris Bryant. I really like the Rockies as a contrarian team.
Yeah, and I mean, looking at some of my lineups, by the way, somebody asked about the weather in Cincinnati. It looks okay to me. Like, we were expecting a late start to the game. It's going to rain for, maybe an hour, hour and a half or so, and then it's clear for the rest of the night. So unless other storms end up popping up, I think they should be good to end up playing there later on after the rain passes. So no real massive concerns there for myself. If I'm looking at my stack exposures, I talked about liking the Mets. On the other side of the game, I'm also getting myself to some Angels lineups going up against Paul Blackburn. Partially, it's because of value. It's a very cheap team to be getting to. But another part of it, too, is Paul Blackburn is just not a pitcher that I've really ever thought is particularly good. And once again, another one of these years for him, 4.41 ERA, 4.69 expected ERA. He does generate a lot of ground balls, but when the ball gets hit in the air against him, a lot of them tend to be home runs. He has a 14.8% home run to fly ball rate this year. So it was a midseason pickup by the Mets, but I don't think he meaningfully helps them in any kind of way. So if I'm looking to get really cheap for an offense the field isn't playing, I like the Angels at low ownership.
I don't hate that shout out in any way, shape, or form. This will be like his 3rd start against them in a pretty short amount of time too. So let me find where I had that note. You should have never just write stuff down by hand. We have computers these days, Eric. What are you doing? Whatever. I'm definitely going to be playing some Angels as well. So I like that shout out. Logan O'Hoppe, one of my highest owned one-offs. He's an absolute goat. Back-to-back home run days. Ended up pretty heavily on that plus 550, plus 500, depending on when you bet it. Option on Wednesday. He follows it up with Thursday going yard. I had a little bit of a small play of my own on that, but Don't think I'm going to be firing it up here 3 days in a row, but I'm definitely playing him in DFS.
Ethan Seven wants to know, do we like Baltimore against Carlos Carrasco today? Yes. I think the Orioles are certainly a team that we could be getting to. Carlos Carrasco I don't know, he's been washed for a really long time now, Carrasco. He's got a 5.68 ERA, a 4.62 expected ERA. Last year, he had a 6.8 ERA, 6.77 expected ERA. Doesn't generate strikeouts anymore. His fastball velocity has really declined this year. So if you look at, even when Carrasco started to dip a couple of years ago, his fastball velocity was still over 93 miles per hour. Now it's below 92. So that's been a big drop of over a mile per hour from last year. So Carrasco, yeah, I think the Orioles are in a good spot against him. It's hard to have any one team, for me at least, be like in 20 to 30% of my lineups because of the amount of options we have today. So I have Baltimore exposure, but it's 11% of them. But that's overweight to the field. I do like the Orioles. Of the teams that I have double-digit exposure to, here's the list: Mets, Angels, Orioles, Braves. Those are the four I have double-digit exposure to.
I like all of what you just said.
And then we've got another question here from Einstein. He wants to know, do we have any love for Boston or the Marlins? Definitely not the Marlins for me. I have a couple shares of the Red Sox, 4% of them. I like the matchup against Jose Urena. Urena has, believe it or not, kind of been competent as a pitcher, which I also don't buy into. I think it's a really good spot for the Red Sox. I wish I had more of them. It's just hard to get everybody on a slate of this size. And yeah, Urena's numbers are decent this year. There's no way it holds up. The guy's been dog shit for like 7 years now. So yeah, I do like Boston against Urena. I just wasn't quite able to get to as much as I probably would have liked to get, which ends up happening on slates of this size. For yourself, Red Sox against Urena?
Yeah, they're okay. And I think the Red Sox are always fun to stack up any given day because they have the speed, they have power throughout the lineup. But specifically, when you can have speed added to the portfolio, you just have other outs that become present that, you have specifically with Duran and Hamilton that you don't necessarily get stacking up other teams. But my issue is it's not the best ballpark. This new ballpark in Arlington from a couple of years ago, we've seen World Series games played there. We've seen, that's the World Series for the Dodgers too, when they had to play out there against Tampa Bay from, it was 2020. They ended up having that out there. So we've seen a couple of these where it just plays really cavernous at times. And then you have other places like Minnesota, great hitting environment. You've got Anaheim, a great hitting ballpark, and wind blowing out ever so slightly there for the Mets and Angels. You've got other game environments when you have 11 games on a slate. That's naturally going to happen. San Francisco and Cincy, I think another good game environment. It's hard to just make room for everybody on this slate.
All right. If you guys haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then also shout out to DraftKings Pick 6 sponsoring the show today. Eric, it is time for the dong pick. You've been running hot. I think you've won something like on the 5 of the 6 of your last home run picks have gone yard. Who's doing it today? Who's hitting the long ball?
Matt Wallner, plus 420 for. This is one of the best power prospects in baseball. And he had a massive strikeout rate to start off this season and ended up getting demoted to AAA. But all he did in AAA was absolutely fireball it out there. 400 expected ISO against righties. He has a 289 expected ISO at the big league level this season. And that's with some retooling necessary. He has a 40.5% strikeout rate against right-handed pitching, but I don't think this guy's going to be getting any swing and miss here. The ball's going to get put in play, and Matt Wallner hits it so high and so damn far. He was ripping up AAA. I think he rips it up here today. Matt Wallner, I can't believe you're getting plus 420 at FanDuel to bet him today.
Pete Alonso going up against a left-hand pitcher who has a above league average home run to fly ball rate. And also we're getting modest ownership on Pete Alonso. That's my home run pick. I'm going with Alonso. We're going with him for the long ball, the polar bear. Pete Alonso, that's my dong pick. From chat, Nicholas Robertson is going with Anthony Santander. Matt Comer is going with Kobe Mayo. We've got Blake Moore going with Masataka Yoshida. Sounds like a Jordan pick. We've got BX44 going with Matt Wallner and Byron Buxton. Hayes is going with Austin Riley. Almost Made has got Royce Lewis. BSQD said Jackson. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which Jacksons there are on the slate. Robert Grease is going with Alec Boehm. Flim Flam Man has got Corey Seager. EMAC going with Matt Olson. Malukar is going with Jorge Soler. We got Ezekiel Tovar from Sotex. Red Kell is going with Yanier Diaz. Eric Traub going with Christopher Morel. He's been reborn as a member of the Tampa Bay Rays after a rough start to the year for him with Chicago. We've got Gavin Lux from Anthony Harris. Brent Rooker from Pierre. David Wayne's going with Mullins and Profar. Chris Williams is also going with Profar. Then we've got Dan Muller's going with Ohtani, Judge, and Witt. All right. Well, you got 3 contrarian picks there, at least. Kenny Wayne, Austin Riley, Chad Wiseman's got Marcelo Ozuna, Jose Ramirez from Rants, Manny Machado from Spanish Martin, Jordan Klein. Close it out. Who's the home run pick tonight?
He is.
You go with Stephen Kwan. Stephen Kwan, the pick from Jordan Klein. Guys, thank you very much for watching. If you have not done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hope you guys have a great weekend. See you back here on Monday.